Kato and I have been friends since 2016. Some of you have been here like 4 or 5 times. We're going to drop into the chat what you know already. But yeah, so we went to UCI together, UC Irvine, and actually never I guess never connected past the one party that we went to. So I actually knew his best friend. And after graduating from Irvine, I actually posted on Facebook like, hey, I'm coming back to my alma mater and I'm going to be doing a talk for my school. And Cato happened to read that and happened to DM me. And he was just like, hey, like, can't make it to your talk, but like would really love to connect. So yes, he slid into the DMs. But not like that, but like to be friends. And we ended up just connecting when we met up over breakfast. And at the ripe age of 23 and 24, we decided we wanted to be life coaches for whatever reason. I don't know what kind of life we were living at that time that made us believe that we had enough to do that. But you know, it's that youthful energy. But I think ever since then, we've always connected on really being able to support folks, like be able to, you know, coach, be able to help. And that's something that we always loved. And so Kato and I went our separate ways. He went into his relationship, which he will chat about. I went into mine for a couple years. And then obviously that didn't work out for either of us. And back in November 2021, Kato shared his feelings for me. I feel like maybe I should toss it over to you, Kato, to like share this part before we, because I feel like I always butcher it.
Yeah, it never gets old every single time I say it.
Okay.
So I tell Steph we're at a music festival. I tell her I got feelings for her. We hit it off. And like I thought, oh my God, my dreams are coming true. This is my best friend. This is gonna be a thing. And we go home the next day and she flies back to SoCal. I fly back to Oakland and she gives me a call and she says, this isn't it. This isn't a full body yes. And in another lifetime, maybe, yeah, sure. If that makes you feel better, yeah, like we'd be together in another lifetime. But not in this universe. So you know, citing everything everywhere all at once. Like there's just like this thread here around like the beauty of it. Like it was the only way for me to accept it. But then a couple months later, you know, I had to set some boundaries to take care of myself and like move on. And that brought up some things in staff. And she told me she had feelings for me. So I don't know how it turned out that way, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, after I shared my feelings for him, we transitioned from a very platonic relationship into a romantic one. And yeah, fast forward to now, and we're married now. So we got married back in December. And so yeah, we're chatting we're discussing all of this through the lens of that long-term you know, relationship. And so, and I think to be clear, we're also like both like monogamous, and that's like what we have decided for our relationship. So yeah, that's the context on our origin story, like where we come from. And so now that we've set the stage, I think it's important before we go into more of the topic for today. I think starting with like, why did we leave our previous relationships? Like, where did we come from? What were the struggles in those past relationships that conditioned us to like how we feel like, you know, this reality is supposed to be? And the reason why we're sharing that context is because it'll help you all understand like why this relationship is new, why we struggle with like joy and stuff like that. If it's not clear yet, our past relationships were full of a lot of hardships and challenges. And so I'll pass it to you, Kato, to start with like, what
Yeah.
was your past relationship like before, you know, we jumped into
Ooh.
ours?
Okay, yeah, this past relationship. You know, the context is important. The my ex, the previous person that I was with, she would demand a lot, and whatever I was doing to express my love never really felt enough. Um, I when I try to listen to her, she would mock me and say, like, don't use these skills on me. So for context, like RBTL is a communication program. It's a school for us to like learn how to relate better. And she would say those things to me when I was actually just trying to connect and support her. Um, yeah, and like when I was trying to pursue my goals and wake up earlier around like 5, 6 a.m. just to start my routine, she made it really difficult for me. And she would say, like, okay, like just do your thing now. And like passive aggressive stuff like that wouldn't really be supportive. And I just really felt alone. Um, so yeah, lots of things that weren't really working out, but I really powered through in this relationship. But I'm going to pass it off to you, Steph, to give your context as well.
Yeah, so I think for my relationship, I was um with somebody who, I entered this relationship at 23, barely knew myself at the time. And I think, I took a lot of ownership over his personal like challenges instead of encouraging him to do that. And so I was very like much overcompensating for stuff that I knew in the relationship he's not ready to face. So like if any of you are familiar with we have friends or family who may not be at a stage where they're ready for therapy or want to explore that. And so that was one of the themes that I had experienced. I think my ex also has ADHD, and maybe we had literally like 3 to 5 conversations about it in a span of like 4 years. And so that really tells you like kind of where we were around like having very real and honest conversations about the impact of these experiences on our relationship and on each other. I think there's a little bit of conflict avoidance. Something that we talk a lot about in Relating Between the Lines is this principle called heartbreak over harmony. And I think because of my ex's cultural background, it was more important to, I think, save face, to um, create harmony instead of like really, really facing those really hard truths. So that was really challenging, I think, because when I try to bring things up, like it would kind of be like, yeah, but like we're okay, like we're okay. It's like, well, we're clearly not okay, but we're also not really having those hard conversations. Um, I think being an entrepreneur, I think I didn't feel like my dreams were supported. And so there were many times that I'd taken risks to create something, go towards something. This could be relevant, not even like if you're building a company, but just like doing the stuff that you love, like the hobbies that you have, like creating art, like whatever it is. And my ex had always like wondered when I was going to get a job, like celebrated me more when I had an interview versus like any other accomplishment that I had experienced. And I think in this relationship, I think this person had a hard time, I think, expressing their like love. I would say it's kind of like, like when you're in third grade and like person who likes you like tugs at your hair and like that's their sign of love versus like actually like being a little bit more like direct about it. So like that was the way I experienced it. But I think the affection that I was sharing was not reciprocated and was very judged. And thus over time, like I just stopped like actually sharing that. And so there's a lot of like different experiences that I had with this person that I think were just in deep opposition to like the values that I actually have, which is like, I'm a big believer in hard conversations. I'm a big believer in like sharing what's going on for you. I'm a big believer. I mean, we're here under like Asian Mental Health Project. Like obviously mental health is really important, but a lot of this I recognize is takes a lot of courage, I think, to face. And so I think, I want to own that like this is not a like barrage and put down my ex or anything like that, but just so much more like recognizing that there's a journey that each of us are on. And I was not ready to like the truth was I was just not ready to like be there the entire time that this person was going to be there. And so I think going into like a new relationship with Kato, like some of the stories that I had was just like, I am like not enough because like if I'm working on my dreams, like I can't show up for my partner, or like I don't think my partner would be open to like hearing some of these things, or like maybe I talk too much, like is kind of the sense that I got. So I like entered this relationship with more I think like reservations around certain things.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I wanted to touch on one more thing because you mentioned cultural differences. Yeah, the culture of the family and the upbringing matters so much. And my previous partner got angry a lot. So I always felt like I was in trouble, like, and I was doing a bunch of things wrong. And it really made me feel trapped. So I think where we want to go from here is to start talking about what was it like entering a new relationship with each other, and what was shocking and special for the both of us. Because when we entered this new relationship, there were a lot of things that were different, and adjusting to that, um, it took time. So personally, for me, I was actually being listened to. It sounds really basic, but Steph is an incredible listener, and there's a lot of ways to listen well, such as like the questions you ask, the way that you share how that lands on you, um, how you allow yourself to be moved by listening to the other person. And Steph does all that stuff and more. Um, she really advocated for my dreams. Um, from stupid things like me wanting to be an eel chef one day. Like I'd love to have my own small shop and make a bunch of unagi bowls. I think that'd just be a really nice fantasy dream. All the way to being an actor and seeing myself on like a TV film or a show, for representation. Um, and Steph is always she's really simple. She's really easygoing. She's not bougie. And the thing that I actually appreciate the most is that we both are able to have deep and quality conversations about our past trauma, our healing, what's our journey like, and how can we make how can we heal ourselves and also help each other heal, and then ultimately how can we help heal the world. So like there's spaces like in relationship with it here with Asian Mental Health Project, so like all these things are really special to me about Steph. um Steph, I'll hand it over to you to talk about me.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think especially that last point that you made about having deep quality conversations, right? I think it was very clear, and I speak to alignment and values because I think everyone's sort of on their own journey, and I don't think there's like a person did this unless it was like really really bad. But I think a lot of us when we experience relationships, it's truly like a misalignment and just like what's actually important, being able to like translate that into like what we really need or want in a relationship. And I think something that's always been apparent in my relationship with Kato is like we both prioritize that personal growth as well as interpersonal growth. And I think that I've gotten a question before from folks who are in this community who have asked like, how does this like what if your partner like isn't isn't doesn't value that as much as you do. And I think that's like a really hard thing. And I think that's why I owned earlier, like, you know, we cannot control or force somebody to learn these things or to heal or be on their journey. It's something that they have to choose for themselves. And so I think a lot about how we can only control what like we want to like we can only control what like we do. And so like that's why like choosing to like be clear about what you value, choosing to like, hey, actually, if this is not working, like I'm gonna step away from that, or like asking for like, hey, like would you be open to exploring that, I think is like really huge. So that was very apparent in my relationship with Kato, was just like we do prioritize this stuff. That is really important to me. If not, if it's not the number one thing, it's definitely in the top three. And I think what was shocking with Cato too was, you know, I think for me, something that's important because I've had experiences where people did not ask for permission to, you know, do things with me or, things like that. Like consent was really key. And like, I think with Cato, there was a lot of conversations and check-ins regularly about like, what is my comfort level with like, this or that, or like, like that was really important to me. I didn't realize it was important to me until I was in this relationship. And that was like shocking. I was just like, oh, I've been in relationships where people have not asked me for permission to do like what we wanted to do. And so I think that plus moving at my own pace was really clear. I think whenever I gave feedback, it was, taken and like acted upon. And that was like really key. Um, and I think Kiddo was always very ready to support my dreams like 100%. And that might not be the same case for everyone, but like just having somebody who wasn't gonna give me a weird look for like wanting to, go my own way or, live life at the beat of my own drum, like that was really important. And so those were some like surprising things to me that I was just like, oh shit, like this is very different. But I think because like, all of us come from like different like experiences, like it did take a second to actually like get used to this. And Keto will kind of like go into like, that experience for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now I'm gonna just get into like the start of a relationship. For everyone in the room, when you start dating someone new, when you're catching feelings for someone, um, or maybe you're still experiencing a little bit of insecurity today, there's always like this kind of period, this gray period. And this is why it ties to the topic of joy versus struggle, right? Like how do you choose the joy and start to trust in it versus worrying about when the shoe's going to drop. So there was a time in our relationship, this was like the second month of dating, January, February, where I started to feel like really secure for the first time, considering the context of my last partner. And the interesting thing was that like the love was always the same, from going from best friends to partner. But what changed was the intention. The intentions were finally matched up, that we were both in this and like interested in each other. And so that brought like an extra level of security for me. Um, there's also this thing around knowing that we're in it for the long haul versus let's just figure this out. And I think like for someone like myself who has anxious attachment, hearing that my partner is in it for the long haul versus like, all right, we'll just figure things out as we go along. The differences in those phrases mean a lot, because one is more grounding, it is a commitment statement, and like it doesn't just discount the fact that we're basically figuring things out together, but it sets the dynamic up to feel more like a team. So yeah, that's why being in this relationship has been really precious for me. It was very new. It is very different. And this experience led me to think this can't be real. And I started, despite feeling secure, I always had these thoughts that pulled at me for when is the shoe gonna drop? Like when are things gonna change? Like this can't last forever. I know there's a honeymoon period, Um, so yeah, Steph, I don't know if you remember any particular stories about me doing this, but yeah,
Well, so Kato and I would like get dinner, or we'd have like we'd share a really nice moment. And then I would look at him and he would have this like super far away look. Like he looked like a sad dog. Like, have you ever seen like videos of like sad dogs? Like they're just like there's like this just like sadness around him. And like I would be confused by that, because in my head, I'm just like, I know I'm in it for the long haul. So I don't know like, what's causing this. And so I would just ask if he's like, okay. I mean, you could share like how you respond
yeah.
back to this. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I would, this still happens today every now and then, but yeah, you gotta know our star signs. That's funny. I'm a Libra. Steph, what are you?
Oh, well, we can get into that later.
Fine. So I was just saying things like, I just want to cherish the moment because, anxiously attached and being in something that feels so good and feels so different at the same time. I was like experiencing an amazing dinner, and then I was looking off into the distance and being like, cherish this because you never know what can happen. Anything can happen in life. Like, just cherish this. So I kind of go off on my own little like thought process around like, it's a little bit melancholic, and it's also like grateful, and it's also really joyful. So it's complicated, right? But I would do that a lot at the beginning of our relationship because I was trying to savor these really incredible moments and to try to be present to it. But the ironic thing is that when you try to be really, really present to something, you like aren't as present because you're trying too hard. I don't know if that makes sense, but like that's what happened to me. I was like, oh my God, like this is incredible, and but it would just kind of warp it a little bit. Um,
I
and I
think
would talk to Steph about like how I'm afraid that it's not going to last.
I feel like it. I mean, I would be curious to hear like where it came from, right? Because like I feel like underneath it is still the fear that it would leave. Like it's weirdly like I'm present for this, but then I still feel fearful that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to anxious attachment. Like there's always an underlying belief that I have around if I at some point she's gonna get used to me, or at some point um she's gonna leave me because um it's just like self-esteem stuff that comes up when um at least for me, like when I fall in love, like it like all the insecurities like flare up. And in some ways, like trying to savor the moment and cherish it and like look off into the distance was a protection mechanism because it's protecting me, embracing me for the day that things might change, the shoe might drop, but at least there were good memories for me to look back on. So it's complicated.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
with Cato, like from his past relationship, because I happened to be also the friend that listened to all of that. Like there was a lot of like earning love, like in that relationship, feeling like not enough. And so like the whole like they're gonna leave, I have to like do more in order for them to stay, I think was very prevalent in our relationship and I think showed up in these moments too. And I think like with this like knowing and this is like a responsibility I think when we decide to be in long-term relationships with people is just like really being able to hold them in their vulnerability in their moments and like be able to understand what their patterns are so that you can support them in those times. And so I think with keto I had to be ready and okay with like sharing reassurance. Like there's a part of me that also like has my own story of like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like I didn't spend enough time with my like ex-partner because I was like going off chasing my dreams. And I always felt like I didn't do enough in that relationship. And I had to translate what Kato's experience was, which is like, it's just really like he needs that reassurance. Like I can't put the story that like he doesn't see me as enough in that because it's not really that. It's actually like, oh, I like this is just like a pattern for him and like that's okay. And like I'm just gonna put a little bit more extra effort to like share that reassurance so that he feels secure in this relationship. And I think that's like something that's important for like all of us to take away.
And that's really important because that's one of the connecting pieces to going from struggle to joy. Like the reassurance really helped me feel comfortable in my current state to really allow me to be like, hey, like, like you'd say like, hey, I'm with you, and um, it would allow me to just be more fully present and to fully accept my happiness in the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's one of the parts.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I think about like how to show up for keto, like I think the worry was just like, is this guy like overextending? Like, am I, because like that was something that was very prevalent in the past relationship. And I think both of us are givers too. Like that's just like the nature of like how we are, and the way that we grew up in our household. But I think for me, it was questioning like, am I making enough space for him in this conversation? Like, he thinks about me a lot. Like I want to be proactive about making him feel like seen. And so we went through a lot of like conversations actually about like really encouraging Cato to share more of like what's occurring for him, especially when he feels like he's in that like struggle bus, because it does take away from being able to be present. And oftentimes it's a lot of like and this goes for like being able to share directly about what's like joyful for you, but also like pinches as well. And so like we have worked through a lot of conflict, and we've built our confidence to like inch our way to like, building a lot of trust, I think, with each other. And this really unlocked a new level of intimacy, I think, between the two of us. Um,
Yeah.
but like we're still like nowhere near perfect, by the way. So like
Yeah,
there's like,
whenever.
a lot like we're learning about each other in the relationship, and new triggers and things that get like unearthed. But yeah, I think we when we talk about this topic, like it's really asking like how do we move from like worrying all the time to like trusting. And then I think also like how do we move from a place of doing this life alone, doing this stuff alone, to a place of like really being open to like communal support and like being able to like lean on each other for things.
Hmm. Yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, um, which is that a couple people were saying earlier about the topic of relating through struggle. And there's a theme of struggle. How do you break out of that struggle? So I'm going to pull on a thread in our relationship or just in my previous relationships as well. Like the concept of earning love, like having to do something and do all the things and sacrifice for love. It's an Asian thing, like acts of service, like hardcore acts of service. And so when I think about being the best partner that I can be, sometimes I have a pattern of overextending, even when I can't tell it. Like I think I really just gotta, all right, how can I even be a better partner? Like how can I like adjust to her schedule better? How can I emotionally support her better? How can I anticipate what she might need and like create that abundance? But when I focus on that and power through my tiredness, I don't have space for like what brings me joy, like because I'm focusing on earning the joy through that. It brings me joy too to do those things for Steph. But the thing that I'm trying to point out here is that there is a hard pattern that I've had that I had to work with Steph to break, which was like, where do we draw the boundaries? And how can Steph support me in following things that bring me joy? And how can I continue to say things like, if I do less, is that going to reflect poorly on me? And so I think that unwinding that stuff was really important for my joy, because I'm a pretty huge like helper slash giver. So if you're a helper giver in the room, like that's part of my journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, I think those experiences of like being able to lead into these conversations to like get to know each other and stuff, I think is also really key. And so um like I think, man, it's hard because every time we go into these discussions, it feels like, oh my god, it just like clicked overnight and now we're here. Like it's the sense that like I always feel like we sort of like discuss when we give off like during these calls. And the I mean there's like, I mean, tens of hundreds of conversations that we've like had to have, I think, to like move from this place of like continual like improvement. I think both of us are like working on that, and to a place where like we have self-acceptance, and also like are be able to like celebrate like things with each other versus struggle. And so even like even when I talk about like these hard conversations that we had, I just remember there was like a time period in the beginning of our relationship where there's just so much working through shit because like we're both big on like that improvement piece, but we didn't realize like so much of that wading through the shit together. Yes, there's of course it's really valuable in getting us to move forward, but there's also a point in which like there's diminishing returns in terms of like talking about this stuff. And I think someone talked about like, what if you like only relate through the struggle versus the joy? And that's like the part where we're just like, wait, actually, like maybe there isn't an issue and we're just making an issue out of something that like doesn't have to be an issue, right? And so like I think from there we've really transitioned, or we're still in a point of like transitioning um out of that like into like sharing more of that. And so I think for this last part to wrap it up, Kato, I think talking about how do we accept ourselves more by like being in the relationship with each other, like maybe like what permission slips, so to speak, like do we grant each other, I think would be like really good to like share at this time.
Yeah. I think there's so much to say about being with someone who consistently witnesses you. Like that's what you've done for me. And the impact of that is like, and this is all tied to like how I am able to access joy more. It's like I know it's okay to be messy and to not know everything up front before I say something to you. Um, I don't have to always have my words, even though I feel something. Um, I don't have to do everything to be loved. Like I'm enough just as I am. Um, my dreams matter too. And, I start to really believe that I'm an influential leader and that my depth has space in this world and it moves a lot of people. So I think it's just a combination of all these things that allows me to um, be more in my joy and to not continuously like self-excavate and figure out how can I improve myself.
Yeah, I think something that is definitely like a part of this journey is like when you're in a relationship with somebody, like how often are you affirming them, like how often are you celebrating a lot of these different things? Because like I know growing up, like we didn't receive, you get like a pat on the back like if you get an A+, and then everything else you're just like get smacked, like so it's like that type of experience where like we didn't grow up um like celebrating that. And I think that there's um you know you don't have to wait until the very end to do that for somebody. And I think that's something that this is like a culture that we want to cultivate, because we've heard the storyline like, yeah, if you like celebrate too much, then it's like then people become weaker. And like that's it's just society's, I think, um like commentary on this. And so I think that's why it's important that we even do this sort of like in front of everyone, just sharing like what we do like love about each other. But I think with keto, like I feel like in this relationship, I feel like I don't have to do things by myself. I'm a very super hyper independent like person. I think I grew up like with my parents saying like you have to take care of yourself. Like, you don't lean on anyone. Like there's a lot of trust challenges, like trust like trauma, I think, in my family. And so like, yeah, you just have to like take care of yourself. Like don't share a bank account. And I think there's like, goes into like a lot of other things. And so yeah, I'm just learning from Cato, like it's like I don't have to do things like by myself. And it is okay to like receive like nice things. Like when I was small, I didn't have a lot growing up, and so like it's really strange to be in a more, I think, abundant place as an adult and be able to receive that. And I think emotionally, like feeling like my feelings are okay, like they're not too much, which is something that my parents like always sort of insinuated by the way that they related or couldn't relate to me. And yeah, I think the last thing is just feeling like my boundaries and my self-care are respected and that they come first, and like that conversation about consent being like really important. And so yeah, I think like as we wrap up like this conversation, I think something that we're really, I don't know, call it conclusion, but I think we're in this space now where we're in that like exploration of what does it look like to actually like be joyful. And we're very lucky, I think, to have, or I feel very lucky that I found Cato, and like I'm in a place where like, you know, I used to feel like relationship challenges was like the biggest thing in my life. It's just like, how do I connect with this person? How do I share what I need? How do I set boundaries? But now, like, that's all dissolved, I think, with the work that we've been doing and how we've been communicating, very, very regularly with each other, and, moving from like avoiding conflict to like repair, like in conflict, and having confidence in that. And so it's been interesting to like lean more into, I think, joy nowadays. And I find that like we're less in conversations about conflict and so much more in like, my God, like what gets us excited? Like what do we want to like do together? Like which was very absent for like a good amount of time. So
Yeah, you know what? I wanted to throw some last bits out there. There's some things that we do that have actually really helped cultivate this, and I just thought of it. So some of the things is like I ask you to like close your eyes and I'll give you like three options. Like let's just say like where do we want to go eat for dinner? And I'll just say the things out, and like first thing that comes to mind, like just building that like that gut choice on like I want that, and trying to help. She does this for me, I do this for her. Help your partner trust the choices that they make rather than getting so much in their head around like I should do this or I should do that, like I should hang out with this friend, or I told him I would, but actually like what would actually bring me joy is just to watch this movie right now. So we've been supporting each other relationally in that aspect. One of the other fun things that we do is we actually check in with each other. We're like, like one of the vows that we came up with is like, well, I'll always protect your happiness. And I think one of the things that we always like, I think we can do it more often, but we do make the effort to ask like, well, what would make you happy? Like, or point out the things that I think that would make you happy. You sound really happy with that, and really making space to like encourage and nurture that and keep that top of mind. Because the self journey is already hard enough. And it's really nice when you have a companion to really help you with that journey as it relates to joy. And I think that's it.
okay. Well, thank you, Kato.